सो हेलो, व्हाट्स अप गाइस? आई होप आप सब लोग अच्छे होंगे। तो आ गया है तुम्हारा भाई एक और न्यू वीडियो लेके। मेरे दिमाग में एक चीज चल रही थी, आप लोग अगर मेरी वीडियो देखते होगे तो आप लोगों के मन में एक ही बात चलती होगी, क्या कोर्सेज जेन्युइन है? कोई स्कैम तो NHI? तो यही डाउट क्लियर करने आज तुम्हारा भाई आ गया है इस वीडियो के साथ। तो भाई लोग देखो, सीधी सी बात है, आज के टाइम पर कुछ भी फ्री NHI। सुसाइड भी करने जाओगे तो जाहिर लेने के लिए भी पैसे होने चाहिए। लेकिन सुनो तो पहले, तुम्हारा भाई जो भी कोर्स लाता है तुम कहो से भी जाके ले लेना। इनफैक्ट उदमई और कई प्लेटफॉर्म पर भी ऐसे कोर्स NHI मिले अगर मिले भी तो बहुत एक्सपेंसिव होंगे। लेकिन तुम्हारा भाई इस चीज को समझता है और मैं खुद एक मिडिल फैमिली से बिलोंग करता हूँ। तो जो कोर्सेस सबको 4,000-5,000 में मिलते हैं, तुम्हारा भाई सिर्फ 2,099 में दे रहा है। अगर ट्रस्ट NHI है तो एक बार कोर्स आप परचेस करके देखो। अगर न तुम्हें जेन्युइन कोर्स मिला तो मेरे कमेंट में नजर करिया देके जाना मुझे। जो आज कोर्स में प्रेजेंट करने वाला हूँ उसकी एक इंट्रोडक्शन वीडियो में डाल रहा हूँ। सो आप लोग देख सकते हैं ओवरऑल कोर्स में क्या क्या है और क्यों आपको लेना चाहिए। वीडियो पूरी देखना, स्किप करोगे तो आपका लॉस है। वो कहते हैं ना, आधा ज्ञान मौत का सवाल। चलो तो मैं मिलता हूँ वीडियो के एंड में।
Exploitation and post-exploitation tactics. Sort of going to give you an introduction. So to start off, who am I? My name is Alexis Ahmed. I'm a senior penetration tester and red team at Hackersploit. I'm also a red team instructor here at INE. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so via my email, my Twitter handle, or my LinkedIn page or profile. I'll be happy to answer all of your questions. All right, so exploitation and post-exploitation tactics. Why are we, making this bootcamp, or why are we actually here? Why are all of us here? Well, exploitation and post-exploitation are an important part of the penetration testing lifecycle and will ultimately define the overall success of a penetration test. Now, while it's true, information gathering is pretty much the most important, or rather I should say the most pivotal, phase of a penetration test. Once you get to the exploitation phase, exploitation and post-exploitation become increasingly more important, right? And the reason I say this is, let's use a simple scenario. Let's say you're performing a penetration test on a large network, right? And once you gain access to one system, your job is to repeat the entire penetration testing lifecycle on the next set of systems. So the only way you can do that, the only way you can begin performing privilege escalation on the host that you've just compromised, or, performing pivoting, is to get a very good understanding of post-exploitation tactics, techniques, and procedures. All right, so this bootcamp is designed for beginners and intermediates that have some experience in pen testing or blue teaming and are looking to improve their knowledge of initial access and post-exploitation techniques. More importantly, this bootcamp is built on the MITRE ATT&CK framework and will cover various TTPs. TTP stands for Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures, and I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. We'll essentially cover various TTPs in order to provide you with a better understanding of what tools adversaries use and the techniques they employ during their campaigns. All right, so that's sort of a brief introduction into what the objective of this bootcamp is. Of course, the second question you might be asking yourself is, who is this for? Or what's the target audience, right? So this bootcamp is designed to really be valuable for anyone, or for everyone rather. So firstly, penetration testers or information security professionals looking to get a better understanding of how to perform various exploitation and post-exploitation techniques. Secondly, of course, red teamers who are looking to improve their knowledge of adversarial TTPs for the purpose of adversary emulation, or planning their red team assessments, or essentially structuring their red team assessments based on a particular adversary or APT group. So if you're a red teamer, you should be very familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework and the MITRE ATT&CK matrix whenever you're performing your red team assessments. And of course, finally, this bootcamp is also for blue teamers who are looking to improve their understanding of adversarial TTPs in order to better understand adversaries and the way they operate. So why is this bootcamp valuable for blue teamers? Well, the best way to defend critical IT infrastructure is to actually learn about how this infrastructure can be attacked or can be targeted by an adversary. So the better or the more you know about the tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers or adversaries will use, the better you will be able to secure the critical infrastructure that you have been tasked with protecting. All right, so let me give you a structure or sort of an outline as to how everything will be broken down. So day one, that is today, we're going to be covering initial access techniques, or rather exploitation, if you will. That's essentially using the name of the tactic on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So we'll get started by getting an introduction to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We'll then move on to the specific techniques that fall under the initial access tactics. So we'll start off by taking a look at exploiting public-facing applications. I've listed the technique ID there for you. Then we'll move on to exploiting external remote services, initial access via spear phishing, or phishing for that matter, and initial access via a drive-by compromise, and more specifically, we're talking about web delivery payloads. So again, within day one, that's what we're going to be covering. Day two will be focused on Windows post-exploitation. So we're going to be taking a look at how to perform local enumeration on Windows, both manually and automatically. We'll be taking a look at various scripts that can automate the process for you, how to identify privilege escalation vulnerabilities, and then, we'll then move on to privilege escalation as a tactic itself. The techniques we'll be covering will tie or will be focused around valid accounts, or essentially, password mining, the process of finding credentials, locally stored credentials on the system that you've just compromised. We'll then take a look at abuse elevation control mechanism. That's a technique. More specifically, we'll be talking about how to bypass UAC on Windows in order to elevate your privileges. And then we'll take a look at access token manipulation, or impersonation, if you will. That's where we essentially impersonate privileged system tokens or access tokens on Windows to elevate our privileges. Now, you might be asking yourself, why am I focusing on these techniques alone? The reason I'm doing that is these are pretty much the most popular or the most used privilege escalation techniques. Long are the days, or we're really moving from a point where privilege escalation vectors like kernel exploits are really getting out of date, and they're becoming increasingly less common. So we need to sort of get up to date with the latest techniques, not just used by myself, but also other penetration testers, red teamers, and also adversaries or APT groups. We'll then take a look at persistence. So the techniques in specific are going to be boot or logon auto start execution. So getting a script or a binary to be executed whenever the system is rebooted, so that we have persistent access to the target system that we've just compromised. And then, of course, we'll be taking a look at how to set up a scheduled task or job that is always running in the background and will always execute a specific binary or script. And in most cases, that is really going to be to connect to our listener or to a C2 server, if you will. And then finally, in the case of day two, we'll be taking a look at credential access. So the technique in specific is OS credential dumping. We'll talk about how Windows hashes its passwords, what hashing algorithms are being used, where the passwords are stored, how they can be dumped, both through tools like Metasploit and also Mimikatz. And we'll be talking about hash cracking. So that's what we'll be covering on day two. Day three will be focused on Linux post-exploitation. So again, we're just going to repeat the same process. We're going to have local enumeration on Linux. We'll be taking a look at how to enumerate information locally from a system that you've just compromised. In this case, it's going to be a Linux system. And we'll be taking a look at various scripts and tools that can be used to automate that process, how to use those scripts to identify privilege escalation vulnerabilities. And then that's when we'll move on to the next technique, which is privilege escalation on Linux. More specifically, we'll be taking a look at two techniques. One of them, or rather both of them, fall under the same technique, but under a different sub-technique ID. So they're both focused. One of them is focused on set use ID and set group ID binaries. More specifically, improperly configured SUID and SGID binaries. And we'll be taking a look at how they can be exploited or leveraged to elevate our privileges. and then we'll be talking about how to essentially exploit misconfigurations within sudo or sudo permissions rather to elevate our privileges. And then, of course, just like Windows, we'll be moving on to persistence, where the first persistence technique we'll be exploring will revolve around scheduled tasks, or in the case of Linux, cron jobs. So how to set up a cron job that runs maybe every couple of minutes, that connects back to a listener. And then finally, the second persistence technique we're going to be taking a look at is the process of utilizing a web shell. So, after compromising a system, if it has a web server running on it, you can easily set up a web shell or add a backdoor to maintain access to that target system after compromise. And as I said, in both of these cases, for both Windows and Linux, these techniques, the reason why I'm covering multiple techniques is so that you have a variety to choose from and you get an understanding of when and where they should be used, because some of these techniques are not applicable everywhere. The final tactic we'll be taking a look at is, of course, lateral movement. So this is where we'll be talking about pivoting through the exploitation of remote services on other systems on a network. So how to pivot from one system to another and sort of, daisy chain your way through a network. So the final tactic we'll be exploring on Friday, which is day 3, is going to be on pivoting.
अरे रुको गाइस, कहाँ चले? थोड़ा रुक जाओ और सुनो, कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट बात करनी है। एटलीस्ट कमेंट बॉक्स में इतना तो बता जाओ कि वीडियो कैसे लगी और क्या समझा अपने इस वीडियो से। आपके कमेंट्स से ह्यूमन मोटिवेशन मिलता है और हम अपना कंटेंट और भी इंप्रूव कर सकते हैं। अगर सच में आप अपना करियर बूस्ट करना चाहते हैं तो आप हमारा कोर्स ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं आज ही। यह कोर्स आपको नए स्किल्स सिखाएगा जो आपके करियर में मददगार साबित होंगे। बाकी तुम्हारा भाई ऐसा ही इंफॉर्मेटिव वीडियोस लाता रहेगा, हर हफ्ते नए टॉपिक्स और नए आइडियाज के साथ। बस अपने भाई को सपोर्ट करना, और वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो तो प्लीज सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलना। आपका सपोर्ट ही हमें आगे बढ़ने का हौसला देता है। और अपने दोस्तों को भी शेयर करो ताकि उनकी भी हेल्प हो सके और लाइफ में कुछ बन सके। शेयरिंग इज केयरिंग दोस्तों। और एक चीज और, मेन टेलीग्राम और इंस्टाग्राम का लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में दे दिया है, वहां भी फॉलो करना मत भूलना। एआपी और भी कुछ जानना चाहते हैं तो आप मुझसे मेरे टेलीग्राम चैनल के थ्रू कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं। मैं इन वाहन भी आपके सवालों का जवाब देने के लिए अवेलेबल हूं। तो मिलते हैं फिर एक और न्यू वीडियो के साथ। तब तक के लिए अपना ख्याल रखो और मोटिवेटेड रहो। थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग। बाय बाय। धन्यवाद। अलविदा।